days. So if a child comes in, is only there 10 days for the first 100 days, you only get to count him as 1/10. By the same token, if you have a kid that's here the first 10 days and then leaves, you count him as 1/10. So when all the dust settled, if you look at our 100th day from last year to where we're at right now, we're not in our 100th day yet, but if you look at that, we're going to lose about 55 ADM. I also need to tell you that we lost ADM last year before I got here. And that's key because I want you to remember that when we start talking about another slide. Here's the good news. They used to take, the state of Arizona used to do an absence penalty. If you had too many absences, they would say, well, we're going to withhold money from you. Never made a lot of sense to us or to me because we still have to have the same number of teachers, the same number of aides, and the same number of secretaries, same number of buses, and we've got to heat the buildings, cool the buildings, provide water. But they would say, well, if you have too many absences, we're going to take money away from you. They've always taken money away from Chino Valley. I'm going to tell you that. The absence hasn't been all that, the attendance hasn't been where it should be. I think it's anything below 85%, John, is where they start?
94, I think, is what
94%? Okay. But this year, believe it or not, they came along and they said, we're not going to withhold the absence from school districts this year. Thank you. Here's the bad news. We've actually had really good attendance this year. That wouldn't have affected us this year anyway, the net loss is we've lost about $225,000 of ADM, but we're not suffering the absence penalty, so that's $165,000 we weren't counting on. So the net effect is, as far as attendance goes, we're looking at a $60,000 loss from this year. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So you can see I've got that $60,000 loss up there. Here's some things that are happening. And right away I've already been told, gee, you need to go to your insurance companies, you need to fight for lower rates. Let me tell you that the insurance companies have been very good to the school district for the last 5 years during the downturn. They have not increased, they've tried to keep their increases to the minimum, but they are at a point where they can no longer do it. We're already starting to hear across the state of Arizona 10% increases across the board. So if you look at that $90,000, guys, we pay about $1 million a year in insurance. If you look at for things like health insurance, for liability insurance, property insurance, etc., etc. So insurance is very, very much a part of our budget. We're counting on about a 10% increase, so it's about $90,000 is what we think we're going to get hit. Arizona State Retirement System, that's the ASRS. Again, because the stocks have been bad for the last few years, the Arizona State Retirement System, a large part of their funding comes from the investments that we have in mutual funds and bonds, in the stock market, and those kinds of things. Let me tell you right now, the Arizona State Teacher Retirement Program is very healthy. But it's healthy because we pay half the teacher's retirement and the teacher pays half. The increase, our half of the increase, is going to amount to about $25,000. The next thing that we're looking at is that policy pay increases. Those are by policy. Teachers that are certified, by policy, a 1% increase annually. When you're looking at 2 and 3% inflation rates, 1% doesn't keep up. As a matter of fact, when we give the teachers this 1%, it's probably going to be eaten up mostly by that Arizona State Retirement System increase. So I don't think the teachers are going to get a raise, even if we do this, or at least not much of one, because that also, like I said, they may get a little bit, but it won't be huge. Then we have an increased maintenance cost. This comes into play later in the presentation as well, but we do have a contract with Sodexo. They clean our facilities, they take care of our facilities, they do maintenance on our facilities. We have a contract with the Sodexo for our cafeteria. But we are under contractual obligation then that this year we're going to see an increase. It's going to be about $20,000. But we're actually going to save some of that back if we do what I'm recommending. Then this overpayment. This one was a surprise. Let me tell you what happened. In the year 2009-2010, the state of Arizona and the Chino Unified School District used some wrong numbers. We're not sure whose fault it was. We don't know whether it was the state, we don't know whether it was ours, but we had the wrong formula, basically, and there was a $70,000 mistake in 2009, 2010. They gave us too much money, of about $70,000. We gladly took it. I wasn't here, but you gladly took it because you recall that things were tough. And we balanced with the state, so we said, great, this is what we got. Then the next year, that mistake was compounded, but not as greatly, and it was a $30,000 mistake. So for those 2 years, 2009 and 10, 2010 and 11, the state gave Chino Valley School District $100,000 more than they should have. They want it back. And the state, when they overpay, they don't negotiate with you because they hold the money. And the way it works is that we don't have to send it back. They're just not going to give it to us. There's not much fight. How's that with possession is 9/10 of the law? Well, they possess that $100,000. Now, I want you to know that we've asked them to please let us pay this out over 2 or 3 years. We've not heard back from them. They have let districts do that in the past, but it's usually districts who are $2, $3, and $4 million that they have overpaid or over budgeted. For $100,000, we're not sure they're going to let us do that. To be honest, we're probably going to want it back this year. So we've got that in our budget. We're going to have to pay it back. All right. Then the 2012-2013 planned over budget, $250,000. Remember I told you we lost students last year. I was new in the district. I did not want to come in and start making cuts. I had no knowledge of the district. I had no knowledge of where the problems were. I have a great staff, great people in the business office, the principals. But I said, is there any way that we can not make the cuts this year? And the answer to that is yes. Any school district is allowed to carry over 4% of their budget into the next year. Chino Valley has been doing, if not the full 4%, at least a couple $100,000 every year we carry forward into the next year. It's kind of like a little cash account, a little savings account. It might sound like a lot, but remember on an $11 million budget, $200,000 really isn't a lot of money. It's nice to have, we want it, but it can go very, very quickly. The other place where we had some money is, again, this is good stewardship, is the state allows you to prepay your insurance, your medical insurance, and beyond this carryover. And we had a good balance in the prepaid insurance, so the decision was made. Let's not make those cuts this year. There was a couple other things out there that was happening. Remember 204 that it was going to keep the 1 cent sales tax? Had that passed, then the schools, we would be looking at what we come up with, John, $1.3 million is what we would have gotten had that passed. So we wouldn't be looking at this number that we're looking at right now. We would have been in good shape. The other thing was that the voters had passed several years ago, a part of the 301 was the 2% initiative, which every year the school district were to get a 2% increase or the rate of inflation. Now hear me on this, whichever is less. So if inflation is only going up at 1%, that's all we were going to get. If it was going up 6%, you're only going to get 2%. When the economy went south, the legislature, they reread their own bill that they authored, and they said, that isn't what we meant it to say, even though that's what it said. They said, we only have to increase transportation. There was a word in there that said, or. We, of course, took them to court. The state of Arizona, all the school districts in Arizona took the state legislature to court. We won the court battle, by the way. Three appellate judge, it's the appeals court, said, no, state, you have to give them the 2%. So rather than give us the 2% that we were counting on, the state legislature quickly appealed it. So we're not going to get it this year either. The other thing that happened is the judge said, and you don't have to pay them the 2% that you haven't paid them for the past 4 years. So instead of giving us the 8%, which would really be a lot of money, we get 0. Instead of giving us the 2% for next year, we get 0. So I'm giving you that history because we were hoping that any of those things might come through for us. Well, as you can tell, it didn't. The other thing that happened is our enrollment looked like it had stabilized. And we were hoping, you know what, because our classrooms are kind of full now, let's not cut. Let's see if we can't keep people here. And let's see what happens to our enrollment, because there was indications that things were turning around. There's indications today that things are turning around. I tell people that when I moved here in July of this year, you couldn't swing a dead cat. You didn't hit a for sale sign or a rental sign. But now they're not out there. We think that the homes are filling up. And today, right now today, our enrollment has increased by about 30 kids. Is that the number I came up with the other day? By about 30 kids district-wide. So, well then how come we have to reduce? Because we don't get paid for those kids till next year. See, we've got to get to the 100th day before we get paid for them. So the reality is, the things that we hedged did not happen for us. We knew this day was going to come, we just didn't know what the final number was going to be. So that $250,000 planned over budget that you see up there was worst case scenario. Let's not cut last year, but if we have to, we'll make the cuts this coming year. Well, we're here. So this is what we have to do. Okay. So as you can tell, if you look at all of those shortfalls, we're looking at about a $600,000 shortfall to our budget. Here's the good news, if there is good news in this. We, the administrative team, along about November, said, we need to start looking for ways to cut now. We cannot wait until May. One of the things that I'm dedicated to in all this, and the administrators will tell you, I don't want to rip anybody. I don't want to terminate anybody. What I want to do is I want to take place through the natural process of attrition. As teachers retire, as people leave the district for whatever reason, we want to absorb those losses. Well, in the administration side, we've already had some resignations. We had a business manager that took a job in Ashford, and we're very glad for her. We're very happy for her. She's going to do a great job in Ashford. But rather than replace her as the business manager, we hired a much less expensive, if I may use that term, bookkeeper. So instead of being administrative level, we hired more clerk level. Then Mr. Scholl assumed a lot of the duties of business manager, and that's great. That's a savings right there. Another part of the administration is, if you look at our plan, we're going to save about half of the administrator if we do what we're proposing is the consolidation of the schools, and I'll show you where that comes in a bit. The student instructional support, we've already lost part of that. We had a technologist one of our computer technicians. He also resigned. Rather than replace him, we said, well, can we do it with 4 people instead of 5? And the answer to that question is yes, we can. So we reduced there. There's a couple other places in there that we're looking at that we can reduce and kind of shift people around and reduce that number a little bit more. We think that we can save about $118,000 there. You'll notice up here that it's grades 6 through 12. I have not included K-5 up here. Quite honestly, we can't. Our K-5 classes, we had a couple of grades this year that were approaching 35, 36. I think you had a 36, Carolyn. We had a class with 36. We don't want to live that again. We don't. And so we've got to get to a place where we can get our classes across the board down to about 30. I know I've taken a little bit of heat for this but let's just agree that we think 30 is probably too big, but that's what we're faced with. Let's just get it down to 30. What we've done is we've said plus or minus 10%. So if you look at that, when it gets to 33, we add another class if it's grades 4, 5, and 6. We're looking at 25 for kindergarten through 3rd grade, I think is where we said. But that's plus or minus, so add 3. So if it gets to 28, you add another class. And believe it or not, it only takes it down to 25 because of the number of kids that we have. So those are the things we're looking at, but we are looking at reducing our grades 6 through 12. That would be Heritage Middle School. Most is going to take the biggest hit here. They're looking at 3 teachers, reducing their staff by. A part of that is that they're graduating a large class of 8th graders and bringing in a smaller class of 6th graders. Heritage has had a rather large enrollment, but for some reason, just because of the way the numbers fall, for the next couple of years, it doesn't look like they're going to be as big. And so that's one of the areas that we think we can reduce 3 without a lot of difficulty. And the last area is the high school. But again, we'll show you in a minute where we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to try and cut there. The last thing is restructure the preschool. Chino Valley Unified School District sponsors and has a preschool. We are required by law to educate those kids that have physical disabilities from the time they're 3 years old until they enter school. We can do that through the preschool. We can also do it in their home, and we would satisfy the law requirement. We think it's best to have a preschool. The problem is, right now we're upside down in the preschool. We are supposed to, because in that preschool we also go out to the community, and it's called a peer group. And you get the peer group in for the kids with disabilities to have that interaction with. We have been able to do that with grants and with other titles. Cindy, you have some money out of your budget for that, is that correct?
From special ed.
Pardon me?
From special ed.
From a special ed grant, those kinds of things. And then we're supposed to charge those kids some money. We've been able to do that through donations, etc. But the reality is we're going to have to reorganize that, and we're going to have to reduce that number by a little bit. And we've got $25,000 up there. You need to know that it costs us $180,000 a year to have that preschool. So we think that we can find $25,000 there. If you look at that, we're looking at $500,000. Our revenue shortfall was $595, our reduction are $500. So we're still about $100,000 short. Where's that $100,000 going to come from? The only place it can come from, guys, we've got to reduce staff or we've got to reduce cost. This is what we think we can do. Go ahead. Oh, I want to come back and give you an enrollment history. Because this has come up. Well, whose fault is it, more or less? Or, well, where have all the kids gone? I was surprised to see this number. If you look at the highest enrollment Del Rio has ever had, that's the DR, they've had 680 kids in that building. Territorial Elementary has had 586. Heritage has had 716. The high school has 831. And the district's all-time high. Now, if you add up those numbers, you're not going to get 2719. I took the highest year they've ever experienced, if that makes sense. And so the 680 for Del Rio is not the same year as the 586 for Territorial. That's just the most kids we've ever had in their building. And then if you take their low enrollment, and their low enrollment is pretty much this year. If not this year, last year. But we're pretty much there. But the low enrollment at Del Rio is 520. The Territorial today is 383. At Heritage Middle School, 563. At Chino Valley High School, 738. But our enrollment at the high school, at Chino Valley Unified School District is 2,221 kids today, and it was 2,221 kids last year. Where's the 55? Where'd we lose 55 kids? Well, it comes back to that 100th day. We didn't have them for the full 100th day. So we have lost 496 kids. That represents $2.2 million in budget capacity that we no longer have. Well, when I read this the first time, it didn't occur to me to say this. We're $600,000 upside down. We've lost $2.2 million. We've been pretty good stewards. I wasn't here. So I take my hat off to John and Carolyn and Scott and Cindy and the other administrators, because they've made the necessary cuts. They've tried to live within the budget. As I said, we've lost $2.2 million. Not this year, but we lost $2 million last year. We lost $2.2 million the year before that. So they have made some very, very heavy cuts and tried to live within that budget to get to that 496. But if you look, Del Rio has lost 160 kids from their high to their low. Territorial, 203 from high to low. And Heritage Middle School, 153. The high school, 93. This was a surprise for us. The wisdom was the high school had lost the largest number of kids. But when we put it up there on the paper and we looked at it like this, we went, really? We thought it would be kind of flipped. But it is what it is. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is what we have today. Remember I told you last year our enrollment, and so I lied a little bit. That was last year's enrollment. K5, 910, you can see 6'8", 563, 748, etc. For the district, we had 2,221 kids. Today is where we're at. 2217, we're at -4 in the district from where we were whenever we took the number this time. But here's the good news. We've got 25 more K-5 students this year than we had last year. Remember I told you that we couldn't cut any more elementary teachers? The reality is we're probably going to have to add one. You know, we're going to have to add one, especially if we want to get down to that number 30. Where, we don't know yet. It all depends where the kids show up. You know, hopefully, you know, sometimes if you've got a real small second grade, you hope every kid that moves from the district is in the second grade. That isn't the way it works. They tend to spread themselves out. So we don't know exactly. And here's where I was showing you that Heritage actually is actually going down by 25 kids, again because of some different sizes in classes. The high school, again, another surprise to us, it looks like they're going to only lose about 4 kids. Now let me tell you this, 213 to 214, what I did is I rolled up the numbers. The first graders now become second graders now become third graders, etc., etc., etc. So this is kind of a projection of if these kids stay in school and move to next year, this is what the enrollments are going to look like. Okay, next slide. This is what we're looking at doing. We're looking at not changing the high school, but Heritage has an entire wing of classrooms that are not in use right now. They are empty. When Heritage was built, it's my understanding that the 5th grade was there. We looked at moving the 5th grade up. We know that there's room for them. I think one of the things that Mr. Muir is looking at, but we'll have some questions in a bit, but he's looking at possibly doing self-contained. But here's the good thing. One of the things that we know is our 5th grade students have lost their electives. If we get them over to Heritage, we might be able to get some of those electives back down to at least our 5th grade, i.e. art, music, those kinds of things, maybe a PE here and there. Then we're looking at taking Del Rio and making it a 1 through 4 facility. We looked at closing Del Rio. I'll tell you straight up, we did. Because Territorial is, quote, the newer school. And we thought, well, what would that look like? We found that what we would have to do is we would have to leave the 4th graders in one of the wings of Del Rio, and they would be so by themselves that after looking at them, we said, I don't know that we want to do that. But then that brings up the question, we're looking at repurposing Territorial and making it a kindergarten center. Those of you that have been to Territorial, you'll know that we've got this 1 wing of classrooms. There's 8 classrooms. They stand alone. They're not connected to the building. This would allow us to basically close the main part of Territorial. We would also close the gym for the most part. It would still be available. We can still use it for activities. We can still use it on bad weather days to take the kids in. But for the most part, it would be closed. We could also close the cafeteria. It would be a huge savings. But then we would open that B wing and make it a Territorial kindergarten center. The words that the kindergarten teachers have already looked at is going to call it, they're looking at calling it the Cougar Cub Kindergarten Center. It was kind of the name that they came up with. I don't know if that'll hold or not, but that was cute. But think about the facility for a minute. Remember that that wing has an entry door and an exit door. You talk about security, nobody gets in unless you have a key. If you look at the facilities that we have now, pretty much people can walk into. If we were to isolate the kindergartners in that room, nobody gets in there. The secretary or teachers, no one's going to have keys, and there are exit doors out the back, but at least the teacher controls that. So we think that would actually be even more safe for the kindergarten students. Now, we're going to leave the secretary over there, but we don't want to leave the secretary all by themselves. That would not be safe either. We want to move our sped ed department out there. And for no other reason than for security. We would move our SPED director out there, we'd move our psychologist out there, we'd move our SPED secretary. We would have at least 4 people in that building at all times to provide that security. So we think this is a good idea for our kids. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. If we did that, I want you to see what the enrollments would be. High school would be 780, Heritage would be 684, Del Rio would be a 711, and Territorial would be 180. Next slide. We believe that if we did this, that the reorganization, we're going to save about $100,000. Actually, this is going to save us more than $100,000 because some of the cuts that I've already talked about up in the top we'd be able to do because we do this, i.e. the half of an administrator. When I say a half, we have a teacher on assignment at Heritage that would go back into the classroom. then we would reassign one of our administrators into Heritage. And because remember, now they're going to have 711 kids, or what was it, some big number. And they're going to need an assistant principal, a full-time assistant principal in that facility. And but again, that allows us to save some money. Some other areas that we think we're going to save are on utilities. I've already talked about. We're going to be able to close off that entire building, the main building, the cafeteria, and the gym area. So we think that'd be a huge utility. Here's a number for you. Do you know what we spent in water at Territorial last year? $30,000 is our water bill for Territorial. It is the only building we have that is on city water. All the other buildings have their own well. So that's kind of a goal for me, is to get a well into Territorial before we reopen it. Because $30,000, guys, that literally, I mean, that'll pay for 2/3 of a teacher. And so we've got to really think about, there's a big savings we could get to right now. Transportation, in talking to Jeff, I had Jeff do some real quick pencil numbers. Just in the mere fact that we do the transfer, you know, we've got kids that show up at Territorial, then they get on the bus and then they transfer over to Del Rio and vice versa. Or just we can reduce some of our routes, we can reduce some of the places we go. We'll be more efficient in how we take kids. The release times will be much more efficient. Jeff gave me a number of, Dwayne, I'm seeing a savings of between $10,000 and $20,000 just in fuel. And that's just quick. I mean, we haven't studied it. It was like, oh gosh, this is how much we can reduce that by. Contracted services. Remember I told you we have a contract with Sodexo that's going up? Well, this would allow our square footage to come down. So we think that we'll offset some of that cost increase by a reduction, because our square footage is going to go down, and we would be able to save some of that money. Now make no mistake, we're going to open up some other rooms. We're going to open up some rooms at Del Rio. We're going to open up some rooms at Heritage. So, you know, there's going to be a bit of a balancing act, but we still think that we're going to be able to save quite a bit in that area. And then duplicated personnel. We're going to eliminate some secretarial positions, some clerical positions, possibly some aide positions. But again, we've had this conversation. My heart is no one loses their job. With the teachers, we are so close right now, as you saw, we had 6 teachers, 4 teachers is all we had up there. We're there right now. In reality, we think we want to lose 6, okay? But we've already lost 4 due to, we've had 2 resignations. We know we're going to have a retirement, and there was another one, I can't remember.
2 retirements. Actually.
2 retirements, and we know that we had a lady who's already moved. So, and we had another resignation mid-year. So we think that we're going to be able to reduce this without laying off 1 teacher. I don't want to do that. I also don't want to lay off any of my clerical staff. We don't have to have this done by August 1 for clerical and the people who work for the district. But as people leave, we're gonna take a number over here. We're going to say our target's $70,000. We put that $70,000 over here. Somebody leaves and say they're making $15,000 a year, part-time, but they leave. We won't replace that. What we'll do is we'll look at our staff and say, who do we have that we can give some of those duties to, or that we can move and we can eliminate a position over here. And we can continue to do that until we get to 70 grand, is what we need to reduce in that clerical, well, I guess I would call that classified positions, okay? I'm going to tell you straight up, we have figured high on what we think our increased costs are going to be. We figured low on what our savings, what we think they're going to be. We could find ourselves in a situation where we're saving much more than this. But we also think it would be foolish to try and guess. Let's get this close, because we could wind up just running out of money along about April or May of next year. You know what happens when a district runs out of money in April or May of next year? Teachers work for free by contract. We don't want to be there. Well, I'd be working for free. Let's not go there either. But the reality is you have a contract, and you have to fulfill your contract. And so the district, they just adjust your contract. We don't want to run out of money. We don't. We want to pay our people, we want to pay everyone through the year. We want to have enough money to get through the year. Okay? What do we got left? In a crisis, and this is my favorite saying, and I say this to the faculty, I say this to the principals, in a crisis, weak organizations fail. You all have seen it. In a crisis, good organizations survive. But the one we want to be is in a crisis, we want to get better. We honestly believe, I know in my knower and I believe in my heart that what we're asking you to consider is going to make us better. Let's look at this just for a minute. How many ways? If we look at all of our second grade teachers, rather than having half of our second grade teachers in this building and half of our second grade teachers in this building, and dividing our resources so that these second grade teachers have access to things and these second grade teachers have access to things, if we can get them all in the same building, we get all of our second grade teachers side by side working together, we believe that that's going to make them better teachers. It's going to increase the kinds of extras that we can put in their classroom. We also believe that there has been, and I'll just go ahead and say this, everybody tells me there's always been kind of a divide between Territorial and Del Rio. We can't have that. They're all our kids. Let me tell you what fairness is. Fairness is when every kid gets what they need to be successful. We want to have a fair system that meets the needs of all of our kids. That's what we're working towards. As we grow, this also allows for smarter growth. Let's say that we do experience some growth and we outgrow those buildings quickly. I hope we do. I hope we do. I hope that this is a one-year thing. I do. Because what we'll do then the next time is we'll add a grade at Territorial. We'll be a K1 school at Territorial. Then let's say we grow some more. Then we'll be a K2 at Territorial. And we'll move our 5th grade back down to Del Rio and we'll be a 3, 4, 5 at Del Rio. And then we've got the best of what I consider to be the education possibilities for our kids. That's what I believe. And I think most people believe that. It's just been a long time coming. One of the things that I've told my faculty, or I've told all the principals, is that the most successful districts I've ever seen for keeping kids and having that camaraderie, I will tell you, it was the Miami Vandals. Whoever selects the names of Vandals is but they did. God bless them, and I love them. My wife was a Vandal. She graduated from Miami High School. But Miami Vandals, you walked into kindergarten, you were a Vandal. I don't know if you've ever met anybody from Miami, but they'll fight you if you say anything bad about their school. The same thing happens with the Morenci Wildcats. They're models. Once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat. And they have this big archway. When you walk into the Morenci School District, once a Wildcat, always a Wildcat. And you're a Wildcat from kindergarten all the way through high school. That's what I want for Chino Valley. I do. I want Chino Valley, when you walk in as a kindergartner, you are a Cougar. And when you go to elementary school, you are a Cougar. One of the things that Mr. Muir and his staff have already started doing, if you haven't heard, the Heritage Middle School is going from the Heritage Hawks to the Heritage Cougars next year. As a matter of fact, he'll probably give you a sales pitch, but you can buy tickets to the hockey game and what they call the Sun Dogs. Sun Dogs will get $5 for every ticket they sell to help refinish his floor to make it the Heritage Cougars instead of the Heritage Hawks. So anyways, what I'd like to do now is I would like to entertain some questions, entertain any concerns you have, but I want to introduce some people. I'm going to ask Carolyn Reeder to come up. Carolyn is our current principal of Territorial Elementary School. Wonderful principal. She has her experience in data and curriculum is outstanding. She's a wonderful educator, wonderful leader. And this has been hard for Carolyn. Carolyn's given up something she loves. I will tell you that. But she's also a team player, and she will do whatever we need to have done to make our school successful. Next person I'm going to introduce is Scott Muir. Scott, if you can come up. Scott is the principal at Heritage Middle School. He's involved as he will be taking the 5th grade. Who's not here tonight, of course, is Susan Clark. Susan Clark will be the principal of Del Rio. She has been the principal, and she will continue to be the principal of that school. I want to ask John Scholl. He's our business manager, and well, he's actually the director of special projects, but as assumed, he's the guy with the money. He's the one that keeps track. You know, when we talk about money, I want you to hear me. We are not in this financial fix because of overspending or because of mismanagement. We're in this financial fix because the state legislature has not funded education for the past 4 or 5 years now, and we've had a loss of enrollment. You just can't keep up when that happens. Finally, I want to introduce Cindy Daniels. She's our assistant superintendent, and so what we will do, we will come up. If you have a question, just ask you guys to go ahead and grab a seat, and we'll be glad to answer any question you might have or address any concern you might have. Go ahead, sir.
But it's not for them, it's actually for you.
Yes, sir.
Since you're the head honcho. You're the head honcho. Right, you know what, the retirement program for the state, if they're using the gal as an indicator, it's been up for the last 4 years, over 13,000. So how is that going?
I can tell you that the state legislature decides that, but they have other investments too. As a matter of fact, Arizona State Retirement, because they are so wealthy, is only allowed to have a certain percentage of their investments in the Dow. But even having said that, the number is set. When was it set, John? In August?
No, it was like last fall. And it's based on an actuarial calculation. The number of people that are retiring, as more baby boomers retire, then there's more money that needs to go into the system to help support those. They've also made some changes in the rules where new people coming into the ASRS, the state retirement system, have to work longer before they can retire to help balance that. But it's really just a calculation based on how long they figure people are going to live. People are living longer. You need to put more into the system to support your retirement for a longer period of time, things like that. It's not just the investments that are causing this. It's lots of other factors that go into that calculation. It increased about, right now, we have to pay about 11% of a person's salary into retirement, and then the person pays 11% of theirs, and it's going up about 0.5% this year.
Okay.
And this has always bothered John. Most I ever paid was 7%. That's how old I am.
Okay. On your little slideshow, you had $2 million is the amount that this district's going to be losing, correct?
No, that's how much we've lost. If you take the 496 kids. Yeah, 499. No, we've lost that over time. If you take that 496 kids and multiply that by the base support level, that's
What is that? What's the number on the base support level?
$4,200 is what we get on average for each student per child.
And that's been over what, 10 years?
no, that's every year you lose that.
We've lost 10 million over the last 5 years
Okay.
in revenue, so we actually have, and that's about a year's budget, so we've actually lived 5 years on 4 years worth of income.
Okay, so it's 46,000 per kid.
4,200.
4,200. But then there's some other factors like the high school.
Sorry, I was looking for that number because I was sat here with my phone. I'm like, I'm not getting 2 million.
It's 4,200 times the 55.
Okay.
And then what happened, you think we only have 600,000 because over the last 4 years we've made cuts to make up for the portion of the 2.2 million that's occurred over those 4 years. So we've been cutting. We've been cutting mode for all that time.
If we have enough space, why not, do we own all the property that the schools stay on? We do? What about taking the bigger schools and taking the small school and renting it out, making a profit for the district?
We're actually looking at that. Number one, you got to find somebody to rent it. But it's not as simple as all that, because when you rent a building out, we don't get more money. All we, is
The district doesn't make any more money.
They reduce.
no, they reduce what the state gives us. See, yeah. So I mean,
You're stuck going by business rules, but you can't operate.
right. If we rent the building out, we're going to have $11.2 million budget next year.
Give or take, yeah.
$11.2 million. If we rented that building out for 11.1, the state would give us $100,000. Okay.
All right. What about your bus line? Can you rent that out to other school districts? Because you guys have quite a few buses.
We've got 26 buses, but I'm glad you asked that question, because our buses, on average, are 17 years old. we need to keep our buses as close as the best as we can, because we really can't afford to have any buses break down. We can't have, so we can't afford to be sending them out on trips, because it would, in the end, if we have to replace a bus, it's $150,000 we don't have. So we're just trying to keep them taped together, to be honest with you. And we take our best buses, those are the buses we send on trips, we send on field trips, athletic trips, those kinds of things, and our long routes.
And we have actually taken on, last year, I know that we worked with Jeff and the county superintendent's office, and we did some bus routes for charter schools in Prescott. So we ran a charter school route that kind of moved the kids around Prescott, and did that because we had a bus availability was taking our kids in and was there. So we did make some money off that. We're defraying some of our transportation costs with the money that we earned.
We pretty much have exactly the amount of buses that we need. Like if Jeff gets with us, if we have one that goes down and we're scrambling. But also, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the recommended age for retirement of most buses is about 10 years, and our average is 17.
Well, it depends on maintenance and mileage on the bus. There's a lot of factors that come in.
We have one of the most lean and efficient transportation departments of any school district in the state of Arizona. I cannot say enough good things about Mr. Lambert in transportation.
I think we backed the state audit.
I
They couldn't figure out how it could be so inefficient and yet operate so cheaper than everyone else.
And I agree with you, there's a lot of things, but I also tell you that I've talked to experts, and what they tell me is 10 to 12 is that after you get to 12, just simple metal fatigue starts to kick in, and you can actually wind up spending more money. And I don't know how many transmissions or motors was it you bought last year?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. Well, we needed 3 motors last year. I can't tell you that. Transmission, I think, is one. But I know already this year alone, we're well over 50,000 in maintenance already. Yeah, and extra maintenance costs.
Go ahead.
Up and beyond.
No, I appreciate your questions. You're doing great. Come next Friday and ask them again.
I'm sorry, everybody. The well, it needs to be drilled. What's a well cost?
Well,
You're looking at 30 grand in electricity every year, right? 30 grand.
No, that's in water. That's
Water.
That's in water.
that's just one.
So 30 grand in water, you can put a well in for 30.
Absolutely. But
And then defer the cost over the next 10 years.
in business you could. But in our business, we would have to spend either capital, or we would have to spend building renewal, which we no longer have, which has been cut to 0. And we honestly don't have any capital. We don't. We're probably going to be coming to the voters and asking for a bond in the next reasonable amount of time, and that's one of the things we'd like to do, is put on there and put a well in. And what do we think, 30 grand for a well, or 60, what was
It's
it?
30 to 50, I think.
30 to 50 grand for a well, but you're right, we'll recover the money in a couple of years.
Right.
But you gotta have money up front to do that.
Okay. One more question.
And we're not gonna get anybody into the building next year. That's gonna seem like a real foolish thing to do.
Right.
Empty the building and dig a well.
What about the maintenance costs? Have you looked at finding another company?
We did a request for proposal. So when we did, we put out it to everybody. We only got one response back.
The same company you've been working for?
No. When we went with this company, before we even hooked up with this company, we did a request for proposal, sent it out to whoever we advertised it. We sent it out to several different companies. We only got one bid back. We had a choice of doing that bid or staying where we're at. We decided at the time to go with that bid, and it's a 5-year contract. So we're in year 2, so in 3 more years we'll go out and bid that out again.
Contract, you're stuck in that. That's fine.
Well, we don't have, that's not true, that's not accurate though.
They're in a contract.
Yeah.
That's what we can do is we have the ability to exit out of the contract. But then we've actually been saving money doing this. And so we can exit, it would cost us some money to get out of it.
What do you
That's
think
the
you
choice.
save in a year, John?
I'm guessing about $80,000 would be a guess.
From whenever the district had it in-house and when they farmed it out?
One of the reasons that we made the savings, for example, runs the services doesn't. That has been actually a very large part of our savings. Bringing it back in-house would now skew our insurance rates much, much higher.
I wasn't saying bringing it in-house, I was just saying
So
fire
that's,
insurance.
I'm glad you asked, because that's something that all of us get, that there's a huge, that's a big cost to bringing it back. That was a good question.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sir?
Are the buses full? I see about 5 or 6 buses each morning.
The answer to that question is probably not, but we're hoping that even by this, we think that we'll be able to get our release times, our start times a little bit more coordinated, that we can run a few more buses or get more kids in there. But Jeff, I'll let you speak to that.
Well, I'd like to first give you a little bit of history. For years and years, we're paid by the mile with the ratio of the student. And John has discovered a couple of years ago a new formula that allows us to run more efficiently. But the old formula for years was, if I ran too efficient, they took money from us because I wanted miles. I wanted miles. It didn't matter if one child was on the bus or not. I got paid by the mile. So school districts around the state were, willing to go out to the ranch or willing to go all these places because we got paid by the mile. Now we no longer do that. We get paid. They tell us whichever is higher. Well, they come up with a figure that's higher, so now I can run efficient, and I'm trying very hard. However, a lot of my numbers, and I don't even think the state auditors seem to understand this, but a lot of the numbers on head count of students that might have 15 this bus, and this bus over here has 80, and then this one has 30, and this one has 20, it's because of the time frame. If I only have a half-hour turnaround time between schools, I have to shorten the route. And the only way I can do that is with more buses, fewer kids going fast and get back. If I had more time between schedules, I could go farther and have more kids on that bus and be gone longer and get more kids. But when you break it, anyway, it's a 4-tier puzzle putting those routes together. And a lot of it is due to the fact of the times of release times. And I really, that 10%, that $10,000, that was a quick calculation off of just my morning runs, of what I've already completed off of what we might do next year off my morning runs. I see a very conservative figure of at least $10,000. I've been working hard on the afternoon runs, and I'm finding a lot more savings. So the numbers that I'm coming up with right now are between 45 to 70. Now, I don't want to go over 70. Buses will hold 85. But anytime you get over 60% capacity, your discipline rates shoot way up. You have all kinds of major problems. So yeah, it's the illusion that we're wasting money when we're sending kids out there with just a few kids on the bus. But those kids have to get home. We still have to provide for them. And so it's part of the puzzle that some of the routes, almost every one of my bus drivers has one route they don't like. Guess which one? It's the one that's efficient. It's the one that has 65 kids on it. But I'd like to say that just about every one of my routes has one of those. And it's all about how the puzzle arrives. But year after year, I still have to go those places, and the kids start to live there. And yes, ma'am.
Is the additional paving of Big Chino Road going to add another stop to your route going out Big Chino?
I would like it to, yes. I would very much like it to. The time frame is the next part of the puzzle, one of those 4 pieces of the puzzle.
It'll be done by the end of June.
Well, I don't mean their time.
Oh.
I mean the release times of the school.
I got it, okay.
I only have about a 45-minute turnaround. To do my Paulden run out here, it takes an hour and 10 minutes. So I've got to try to figure out how I'm going to do that when the schools are getting out 45 minutes apart. And you can only do that by overlapping and doing different, short run, long run, and try to make the puzzle fit. And it's looking like we're going to have enough buses to do it. And I think there'll be quite a savings in it too as well.
And those are valid questions because we're looking at that. We truly are. We think that by doing this plan, that if you get all of your, who has the K2, is they have the shortest day? Kindergarten has the shortest day. And is it first and second or first, second, and third? K2, they have the shortest day, then 3, 4, 5, and everybody has a different length of the day by statute. And so this will allow us to get all those kids in the same spot and release, we hope, more efficiently and start more efficiently. One of the things that puzzles me is why we start so early. But the reality is, I read the paper this week. Somebody was upset because they got kids standing in the dark. And I understand that. I do. But I also know that parents like that early start because they're on the way to work. We live in a different society where moms work and they want to be able to drop their kid off on the way to work. And so you know, we're trying to meet a lot of different needs and wants.
And I can tell you some insight. The middle school hours changed a few years ago from 1,060 a year to 1,000. And I was looking forward to having kids less time on campus based on what the state's done. But I can't change my schedule because the high school gets out at 3:30. I get out at 4. Actually, the high school and the kindergarten have the same amount of hours required by the state. Different from 3, 5, 6, 8. And so that's what it's at. And another thing that's interesting to me, I continue to be amazed as I walk out of my building and go do bus duty after school, how many parents, even at the middle school, continue to pick up their kids. My parking lot is chock full, in fact, so full that I've had to reroute buses to a different direction. Jeff and I talk about this every year. What's the best way to do it? I've opened my parking lot and that main driveway coming into the middle school for parents that park along there and pick up their kids. And that's just something that's a culture that exists out here. Elementary schools are exactly the same way. It just seems like that's what parents want to do. So a lot of those kids are picked up by their parents that don't ride buses too.
One of the things that I think people, a lot of times when we get phone calls in our office about, hey, a bus just went by my house that only had 3 kids on it. A lot of times we have special needs students who don't always attend school all day long because maybe of their disability or something like that. And so Jeff runs bus runs in the middle of the day sometimes that just have a few kids on them because they're physically unable to attend school for a whole day long. So sometimes we see that. And also you have to remember that when we have a bus full of kindergartners, you can't see them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, what are the hours for kindergarten now?
7:45 to 2:45 and they're about, the kids are dropped off about 7:30 at Del Rio and they leave Del Rio at 2 for K through 2.
So, you said the cafeteria would be closed for kindergarten, so what are the hours?
Satellite.
Huh?
We're going to satellite food over. And what that means is we have a truck, we already have the truck, that you bring hot meals over in hot trays and feed the kids. And we'll do that out of.
We already do.
So it
We
wouldn't
do it
become
for
like a
instance.
half day,
No.
because I have waited 5 years for my kids.
We're going to,
There's no plan to mess with all day K. Really,
we're going all day.
Cool, okay.
And they'll be fed breakfast and lunch.
Okay, and then what about, just an example, so I'll have a 3rd grader and I'll have a kindergartner in 2 different sections. Are you kind of working on release times? I'm trying to figure out, I'm an organized person, how I'm going to get a kindergartner at one school and a 3rd grader at another.
The issue with that, I got to tell you, is that we recognize that, but I also have to tell you that if it doesn't happen in 2nd and 3rd, it's going to happen in kindergarten and 3rd, it's going to happen in 3rd and 5th, and it's going to happen in 5th and 8th.
Right, but isn't that 3 o'clock to 2 o'clock?
You know, but that's.
Well, let me give you an example. I sat down with my 5th grade teachers yesterday. When I tell you there's 1,060 hours required for middle school, that's 7th and 8th graders. 6th graders are considered part of the elementary school. So when I have the 5th and 6th graders in my school and the 7th and 8th graders in my school next year, I'm looking at having my 5th and 6th graders released at 3 o'clock. They don't have to go as long. They're 960 hours required. So I'm looking at starting 5th and 6th graders at maybe 7:30 and going until 3, because they don't have to go that 1,000 hours. They only have to go 960. And then I'll have my 7th and 8th graders start at 7:45 and go until 4. There's going to be some, because I want to keep those kids separate as well.
Right.
And you'll see most of your,
Well, yeah,
But your elementary schools are probably-
And that's.
Right, and I can tell you right now, if your kids were going to Del Rio next year, and like if we had the same configuration we have now, they would be out at 2 different times. Because at Del Rio right now, K2 gets out at 2 o'clock and 3-5 gets out at 2:50.
Right, that's what
And
I'm.
so We have not established the end time for kindergarten for next year yet. It won't be any earlier than 2, won't be any later than 3. But part of that is, okay, here are our numbers. We have to redo every bus run, every bus stop, everything. And my guess is that we're probably going to fall somewhere around 2:30 for kinder release is what I'm guessing.
And what I'm going to say is that's going to be a problem. It is.
Well,
But
it's for working moms.
it is. But the other, I would love it if we were back in the day when K-12 got out at the same time. We're going to need 52 buses, not 26. You know, and that's just, it's just financially impossible.
Okay, what about the after-school program?
Still will be at Del Rio.
And they can territorial kindergartners?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a transfer bus. We have, it's called Chino After School Management Program, so you're familiar with that. It starts at 2 o'clock at Del Rio. We have 3 classrooms for that. It's fully self-supporting. So the school district budget doesn't support after-school care. For children, that's actually paid for by the parents. It's a reasonable rate, and it's open until 6 p.m. So kindergartners who go to the CASA program actually can ride the bus to Del Rio to CASA.
And then, I know it costs money, like he was talking about renting out part of that building. Have you guys ever thought about, I don't necessarily want to call it a daycare, but
Yeah, they're never talking about
a paid where younger kids have a place to go for daycare. Chino works with parents, call them Chino parents, because there is nothing. There's one daycare in Chino that I pay a lot of money for. I just think there's money to be made.
Okay, can I just, because I don't want
Kindergarten.
I'll just tell you,
Yeah.
it's not our mission.
Yeah.
It's just not. And not only to do that, then we're also talking about layers of licensing, layers of paperwork, layers, and then we have to find people, and that would be going in another direction, that we would be funding something we don't get paid for, and that just isn't a direction that do we want to support it? Sure, we'll support it, but we can't be the driving force.
We actually investigated it last year because we talked at preschool about reorganizing the preschool. We were thinking about reorganizing it into something larger and to do exactly what you're talking about.
I just told
But
you
it was
2 years.
there were issues. It was licensing issues. Also, we're the same. It's actually against the law for us to use school funds for kids that are not enrolled in our school. And so that would have to be a fully self-funded program, probably just as expensive as any other commercial entity.
Well, once again, you're back to leasing the building. If we're doing something like that, maybe not a huge profit, but
What about using the J-TED program? Those kids have like a beginning, I don't know.
It's called child care development. Yes, we have looked at that. We are exploring that. We are. But again, I'm coming back to it, and we're also talking about when does it start. This is not going to solve our budget problems. We've got bigger problems. We do. It'll help.
It's like I lived by a base where they were getting ready to close the base and they turned around and spent $500,000 to build a building and put a blacktop in, just to rip down everything like literally a year or 2 later, because if they didn't utilize those funds, they weren't going to get into the future.
it's the
Makes no
nonsense
sense,
of
but-
running a state agency there.
I mean, we're lucky to have buses. Where we came from, there were no school buses. We lived 5 miles from school and those kids were forced to walk 5 miles. No buses.
And I'll tell you straight up, there's no requirement for us to have a bus.
For special needs students.
Yeah, but that's what you do in this business. That's we're allowed. But the formula that you're talking about, it's based on I think it's based on like a 1987 funding formula. We've changed since 1987, but we're still using old formulas. Have any more questions? Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm confused about your deal about, at the very beginning, where you said you had to go to the state because they promised you this money and then they weren't going to pay you and then you won, but you didn't get the
No.
money.
It was a lawsuit in 301, and I think this was about 10 years ago. The state of Arizona passed the 301 initiative, and part of that initiative is that the state would give the base formula a 2% increase for the next 20 years. And they started giving us that 2% increase. You know, and it was wonderful. We said, okay, we're not as strapped. When the budget crisis hit 5 years ago, the state, they pulled out their law and they said, wait a minute, it's got this word in here, it says or. Or. And they took that or and they said, we don't have to fund you, and they quit. So the Arizona School Boards Association, the Arizona School Administrators Association, and the Arizona Education Association sued the state of Arizona. It went to the appellate court, and the 3-member appellate court said, state, you are wrong. You have to begin funding that 2% this year. Okay? But the legislature, rather than fund it, turned around and said, now we're going to appeal. So now they've appealed to the Supreme Court. During the appeal, nothing happens. And this appeal could take another year. That's where I'm at with that.
How many years do they have?
Pardon me?
How many years do they have?
Well, I don't know. How long has that Flores been going on?
Well, they're about 5 in arrears on the payments, but what the appellate court said was, you need to start paying it, but you don't have to pay them what you didn't give them. And they still turned around and said, no, we think we want to appeal that again. And so, you know as well as I do, the longer they can drag it out in the court system saves them money for the.
What about our state representative?
Call
We have not had broad support
Yeah, I assume you guys have been in contact there.
on a regular basis.
And nothing,
Not for
them. They're not listening to us.
well, maybe it's time to come.
Fire them and put them on the.
I'm not making a political speech tonight.
That's why I said,
We have not received the kind of support from our local state senators and representatives that we would like to see for education.
And some of the things that we're doing is we've had really big cuts. You know, our base support level, really, the amount per student has been flat over the last 4 years or so, even though we have increases in insurance, increases in ASRS and state retirement, things like that. So we've had to make cuts, and a lot of, for declining enrollment, we also had to make cuts for increased costs. And that was kind of explained in this. One of the bigger cuts, actual cuts, have been to our capital accounts. Things that buy buses and textbooks and equipment and computers. They've actually, we were looking today and we did some calculations. We are only getting about 17% of our soft capital allocation, which that does buy textbooks, technology, and buses. We're only getting 17% of what we should be getting. What we've had to do to make up some of the money in our M&O, our operating budget, is and the state allows us to do this, we've moved money out of capital just to help pay the bills in M&O, which it even gives us that much less capital. And so we've actually, even though they can say they've given us the same amount per student, because they are, on the M&O side, they've actually taken away 60% of our capital or so. I mean, there's 2 different accounts, but 60% or so of our capital, and that's hurt us significantly. And that we didn't even talk about today.
No,
Those are things that we didn't even talk about.
Building renewal is $500,000 a year. And building renewal is what you can buy carpet and refrigerators and roofs and
Air conditioning,
yeah,
small coolers.
That has been cut to 0. We've gotten 0 for the last 3 years.
3 or 4 years.
3 years. But we still have to fix roofs. We still have to fix air conditioners. We still have to do. Well, when the only source of money you have is M&O, you wind up spending your M&O. Yeah, they're giving us the same dollars for M&O, but we've had to rob from that to preventative maintenance is the big thing. With building renewal, you can spend a portion of building renewal on preventative maintenance. Well, building renewal goes away, so where do you take preventative maintenance out of? You take it out of your M&O, which is that money that we're short. Okay?
And I do want to give you a quick warning. You're going to see probably in the next month or 2, we're going to be doing some solar installation at the high school. Hopefully in the next 6 months, we'll be doing some solar installation at the other 3 schools. We're actually not paying for that. That's free to the district. What's happening is at the K-8 schools, APS pays for it, and they sell us the electricity at a little bit less than what we're paying for now. The other project at the high school, it's a company called Solar City, and they're down in Mare. You can see they have a big Solar City building on the west side of the highway down in Mare. That company's actually paying for it, and they make money off selling the electricity. We get covered parking and cheaper electricity. It's zero cost to us, but there's an appearance that we're spending money on this stuff, and we're not.
What about federal grants? Have you looked into getting federal money?
That's my job.
Yep.
And one thing that I'd like to share with you is, under the current presidential administration that we have, federal funds have been significantly diminished. And there were things that we always could count on year after year being available, whether they were money for competitive things, maybe money to help like for your school libraries or mental health services or things like that wasn't just given to you, but you could compete for if you had a need for it. And federal projects are regulated by their own set of federal laws, and those federal laws expired on December 31st, right before Obama took office the first time, and the Obama administration has never reauthorized any of those laws. And so we've been operating kind of in the abyss, just in this no man's land for the last, over 4 years now. And what's happened because of that, they've, instead of paying careful attention to and making a systematic way for federal money, they've been funding things sort of willy-nilly or special projects. And they've done it by administrative rule, when normally the United States Congress has to pass and approve those laws. So we've seen funding for things go through, and I'll be very honest with you, rural America has lost significant amounts of funding over the last 4 years. Without exception, the money has gone to 5 major urban centers. It's gone to Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City, and another, like Eastern Seaboard conglomerate, kind of like Baltimore. So when you think that money that typically has been earmarked for projects in rural Arizona, we haven't gotten it. And kind of another funny thing that I know we really get in this area and understand is that because 85% of Arizona is public land, we're not collecting taxes on public land. And because of that, schools in the West and things like infrastructure, roads, sewers, stuff like that are grossly underfunded. In the East, almost all the land is private land, so they generate taxes. When Teddy Roosevelt was president, he introduced a law that we still have on the books that allows federal states to get money from grazing fees and national park entrance fees. And that money goes to the counties, and they split it 2 ways. They split it to roads and to schools. And that's called a payment in lieu of taxes. Every single year, those funds are on the cutting board at the federal level because people in eastern states think it's not fair that western states get that money. Well, we have all that federal land and no way to gather taxes on it. And that's something that I will put out for you in the Chino Review. When you have an opportunity to write your legislature, that's something that they respond to are letters from constituents in the West. Because otherwise, we run the risk of losing that. They'll take them, there will still be national park entrance fees. There will still be grazing fees. But that money will go to fund projects in the East. And that's not what we want to have happen. So that's something that, it's a funny thing, and I tell these guys all the
Forest fees,
time.
talk about forest fees.
And that's it, those are the forest fees.
Forest fees.
Those are things, and I'm the president of the board that, for this county that distributes that money to school districts. So I will tell you, I tell people all the time, when I was a little kid, I never sat in the basement playing with my dolls, hoping to grow up and be a bureaucrat someday. And that's exactly what I feel like.
Now, all that's not federal land. We have state that we lease, we have federal that we own, and we have forest that we lease to ranchers.
And I don't want to, we'll get off on this political tangent, but do you know who owns the state lands? Do you know who owns, by statute, who owns state lands? The children of the state of Arizona. That's in our Constitution. But we're not getting it. That's kind of been a fight. Is the children of the state of Arizona own state lands?
But isn't a majority of this state owned by the federal government anyway?
Well, it might be, but yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for
So much
all that. You thought outside the box.
That's the
There are many government entities that can learn from you guys, taking those difficult problems and resolving it through good, educated, systematic type of programming. So thank you. And like I said, there are government entities that really use your expertise to do a better job for America.
Well, thank you very much. Do I have any more questions? Yes, sir.
You said that you have solar that you're not, your guys aren't paying for, but since Tess is not going to open as a school, could you guys use that land for solar and not be deemed?
I think we're actually going to put a solar plant there.
We're going to put a solar plant at Territorial.
Okay.
And basically it's going to be covered parking, and so all the.
Well, what about the fields and stuff, you know, temporary solar installation?
Well, that kind of construction isn't that temporary.
Well,
So-
I know, but there's non-intrusive
Right.
ways of sticking it on the fields and stuff like that you guys do.
And what we're doing is APS is actually paying for the installation, and they're maxing out the installation with our current electrical usage right now.
Okay.
So they're not willing to pay for any more anywhere else.
What about the other company? Were they?
They're limited by, they actually have a smaller limit than APS does, because APS puts puts more of a limit on them. So once APS builds theirs, no one else is able to build and get any kind of the rebates and tax incentives that they would need in order for that to be affordable.
Let me
So
also
we're
tell you
maxing it
the
out.
savings that with this solar thing that I learned just recently. The savings doesn't come next year. Doesn't even come 2 years. Where it comes is 10, 15, 20 because our rates are locked. So as inflation goes up, our rates for electricity are going to remain flat. We'll never see that benefit. John might, all depends how you decide to work it on. But that really is where the saving comes out. Man, 10, 15 years from now, we're still going to be paying today's rates for electricity.
But it means a lot, right? APS can come back to you later.
The Solar City rate is locked at 6.5 cents. I think we pay about 7.5 now. I think it's 6.5. And that is over 20 years in the contract. It says it's going to be the same amount for that entire time.
And then at the end of 20, we own the plant.
But that's the service life of the solar panel, it's 20 years.
Right. Or we can ask them to remove it. That's the other option. If we don't like it, we can ask them.
No, I think you guys did right. I mean, you guys are up against a lot. I'm impressed. You guys are working hard to juggle the numbers.
Well, thank you. We're not lying to you.
Well, if you are, we'll find out someday.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. You said that you're going to reduce some by instructional aids and stuff like that, reducing?
I'm sorry, let's say it again.
You're reducing some of it by the instructional aids and stuff like that. How does that affect the special ed department?
The special ed department is, there are certain things we cannot reduce. That, you know, there are certain kids, and I think somebody said it earlier, we're one-on-one. We're one-on-one with kids. We have to be. No, like right now, where we've got some large classrooms, we've got a couple of grades that, like I said, we're 35. What we've done in those classes, we've said, you know what, we're going to give the teacher an aid. When we combine, we don't want to be there. So right there is a couple of aid positions that we can reduce.
I know years before you took like the resource students in the high school and mainstream them.
Our resource students at the high school are full inclusion students, and the aides and the resource teachers actually go into the classroom. And part of the reason for that is that our resource students, and that's not our severe and profound students, the ones who may be wheelchair bound or have tubes or things like that. Our resource students at the high school, that's a transition period for them, and we're working in that transition period to help them be able to, for lack of a simpler way to put it, survive well in society. If you're at the high school level, if our special needs students are only with other special needs students, the transition to real life is really, really hard. We do have a grant-funded program called Transition from School to Work. That's a year-round program for some of our older high school special needs students, and we help them find jobs, take them to their job, work with their employers to help them make a successful transition. But that's something, one of the things that we'll probably do a little bit differently in high school this fall is 2 classes that are resource math, where the students aren't full inclusion. And the reason is kids have to have 4 years of math to graduate, and many of our special needs students wouldn't be successful in a calculus class, for example. So we'll have math that's geared more toward, again, I would think of as math to get by in the everyday world, having a checking account and doing those kinds of things.
I have a kindergarten for special needs. How's that gonna work next year?
A special needs student in kindergarten right now, if a student is in our centers program, which is for maybe our wheelchair-bound students or the kids who have very profound disabilities, the centers program for kindergarten through 2nd or 3rd grade, because we want to make sure the numbers are just spot on, will be at Del Rio School. And if a student is in kindergarten in that special centers classroom, then some parts of their plan, we may say that for an hour or 2 a day they're in a regular classroom with their peers, and those students will come to the kindergarten center at Territorial for those couple hours a day to be able to be with their peers.
Well, yeah, the one-on-one.
And the one-on-one comes with. So it would stay the same. Jeff would go over and pick them up, but that student, if your student's in kindergarten next year, then he'll be in first grade next year, so, yeah.
So he'll be in Del Rio next year?
Be at Del Rio in the centers classroom with Mrs. Coomer next year, if he's in centers at Territorial this year.
Any other questions?
I'd like to clarify my answer to the lady in the back that about Big Chino as they extend the road out there. We've always tried to make a commitment as they made improvements to get farther out with the bus routes. It doesn't seem that many years ago to me, we were just going up and down the highway. As they paved, we started getting out farther and farther. I think my answer to you kind of before was elusive, but the answer is I don't know, and the answer is still I don't know. But I would like to clarify that two of the biggest stumbling blocks I look at first. The state has a tendency, the county has a tendency to make these improvements, and I'm not always informed about them, but they make the improvements, and they'll do a beautiful paved road out somewhere, and there's no place to turn around and forward.
It's going to be at Bull Snake. It's going to go as far as Bull Snake. So it's going to go 1 more mile past Big Springs Ranch Road out to Bull Snake.
Well, one of the people, what they don't understand is,
But
it's legal for us to turn around a bus, pull onto a road, back up, and so forth. Our insurance company and DPS tells us not to do it. They tell us not to back up buses. We need a turnaround. To get a full-size turnaround, fix the property. And quite frankly, over the years, the biggest help I've got is from the public. I have not gotten much help from the county, the state, and so forth. Up on Rolling Hills, if you know, up there, Mr. White donated part of his pasture. And that's how we have a turnaround. That's how we get our buses up there, is because Mr. White found he can write it off on his taxes and donate us a turnaround.
Yeah, they need a turnaround at Big Springs Ranch Road,
Okay.
where the Paulding Community School Bus turns around here. I don't know what's happened there, but they're out that way, go out to Bull Snake.
That's the primary, and then the secondary one is that time turnaround.
I understand.
How far can I go and leave the time you can give me?
Do I have any other questions? Okay, we'll stay up here for a couple of minutes if you want to speak privately, but otherwise, thank you for coming. Know that we want what's best for your kids, and don't hesitate to call.
Thanks for inviting us. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for inviting us, yes.